The U.S. Senate has rejected a Democratic-led war powers resolution and failed to advance a bill aimed at blocking President Trump from using further military forces against Iran. And the U.S. defense chief says Washington's efforts to deal with Tehran's nuclear ambitions will send plenty of signals, responding to a question related to North Korea's criticism of military operations against Iran. The White House also said its policy toward North Korea remains unchanged when asked whether the strike on Iran would affect Washington's approach toward Pyongyang. After seeing a sharp fall in stock for the past 2 days, the South Korean stock market saw a sharp rebound this morning, prompting buy-side sidecars on both the KOSPI and KOSDAQ markets. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. We begin today in the situation in the Middle East, where the U.S. Senate rejected a bill to halt the war against Iran, failing to advance a limit on President Trump's war powers. Our Muniron starts us off.
U.S. senators on Wednesday rejected a bid to halt President Donald Trump's military campaign against Iran, signaling early support for the war. The War Powers resolution, which would have required congressional approval for further strikes, failed in a largely party-line vote, with a similar showdown now looming in the House on Thursday. The vote comes as President Trump doubles down on the campaign, issuing a stark warning after Iran's supreme leader was killed in joint U.S.-Israeli airstrikes over the weekend. Trump said anyone who appears eager to assume Iran's top post ends up dead, while praising what he calls the success of Operation Epic Fury, claiming Iranian missiles and launch systems are being rapidly wiped out. At the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth struck a similarly forceful tone. According to Reuters, Hegseth said the U.S. was winning decisively under Trump's direct command and highlighted a major naval strike against one of Iran's most prized warships.
An American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death.
Even as U.S. officials highlight gains, questions are growing about whether the conflict could widen further on the ground. Fox News reported Wednesday that thousands of Kurdish fighters had launched a ground offensive inside Iran, while the Associated Press cited Kurdish sources claiming Washington had sought their support. The White House has denied those claims, with spokesperson Caroline Leavitt saying the U.S. is not backing an uprising, a position Hegseth has echoed, denying any U.S. role in arming Kurdish groups. With the conflict already expanding across the region, Turkey's Ministry of National Defense said Wednesday that a missile fired from Iran toward Turkish airspace had been shot down by NATO. Israel has continued to strike Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon, while Iranian missiles have targeted Israel and Gulf states. According to the U.S.-based human rights activists in Iran, the war has already killed over 1,000 civilians in Iran, while global energy markets and international travel have been disrupted. Behind the scenes, diplomacy appears uncertain. The New York Times reports that Iranian intelligence officials quietly reached out to the CIA through intermediaries shortly after the fighting began, signaling interest in talks. U.S. officials remain skeptical, and Trump has since declared it too late for negotiations. 문혜련, Arirang News.
And U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also says Washington's military operation against Iran will send clear signals about a stance on nuclear threats amid criticism from North Korea. The White House also added that the campaign does not change the U.S. approach toward North Korea, maintaining a strategy of deterrence and diplomatic flexibility. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says Washington's ongoing military operation against Iran will send plenty of signals as the United States moves to address Tehran's nuclear ambitions. Hegseth made the remarks during a press briefing on Wednesday on the U.S. military campaign codenamed Operation Epic Fury, which began Saturday in coordination with Israel. Responding to a question about North Korea's criticism of the operation, The defense secretary said the situation involving Iran should not be viewed in connection with other countries. He stressed that the United States remains focused on dealing with Iran's nuclear ambitions, adding that the steps taken in the process will send clear signals. His comments came after Pyongyang condemned the U.S.-Israel campaign on Sunday, calling it an unlawful act and a violation of Iran's sovereignty. Meanwhile, the White House says Washington's policy toward North Korea remains unchanged. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Wednesday there has been no shift in the U.S. position on North Korea when asked whether the strike on Iran over its nuclear program would affect Washington's approach toward Pyongyang. The Trump administration maintains what it describes as a dual-track strategy toward North Korea, combining strong deterrence with a high degree of diplomatic flexibility. While the administration continues to uphold the goal of complete denuclearization officially, Washington has shown a shift toward nuclear management and a de facto acknowledgement of North Korea's nuclear status. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The escalating tensions in the Middle East could have long-term effects on other countries, including the Korean Peninsula. Though direct military conflict is unlikely, political and strategic consequences may follow. Our An Sung-jin explains more.
U.S. military operations against Iran came amid ongoing nuclear negotiations and are allegedly aimed at regime change. However, the effect of these will echo far beyond the Middle East. The crisis does not immediately raise the risk of a direct military conflict on the Korean Peninsula, but it may raise alarms from two different aspects, reshaping the broader strategic and military landscapes on the Korean Peninsula. Developments in the Middle East could further harden the confrontation between the U.S. and its alliances, including South Korea and Japan on one side, and North Korea, China, and Russia on the other.
The situation in Iran right now is leading to a power balance struggle. What happens there isn't only affecting Western nations, but it will also influence other U.S. alliances in Asia, which may reshape the regional power dynamic.
Such polarization may reinforce North Korea's nuclear strategy, deepening long-term tensions on the Korean Peninsula. And this intersects with the Trump administration's push for strategic flexibility of the U.S. forces Korea. This initiative seeks to expand the operational scope of American troops stationed in South Korea from beyond deterring North Korea to deployments across the broader Indo-Pacific region. If the conflict is further prolonged in Iran, some USFK assets could be redeployed to the Middle East, hurting the peninsula's security posture.
What we might need is a careful understanding of the initiative and, if needed, looking for ways to amend it.
Bilateral security negotiations between Seoul and Washington are also showing signs of strain, with initiatives on nuclear-powered submarines and revisions to the bilateral nuclear cooperation agreement allegedly being delayed again. The planned visit to South Korea by the U.S. negotiating delegation was initially set for January, but was postponed to late February or early March. This, too, had been recently rescheduled for mid-March following U.S.-bound investment issues. However, with the U.S. strike on Iran, overall consultations on alliance security cooperation have been put on hold. Tensions in the Middle East are less likely to produce a direct conflict on the Korean Peninsula. But Seoul may have to brace itself for a more unpredictable security environment, with heightened strategic uncertainty on the peninsula in the months ahead. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
And President Lee Jae-myung has pledged a comprehensive government response to the situation in the Middle East.
중동 지역 위기가 고조되면서 글로벌 경제 안보 환경이 많이 악화되고 있습니다. 각 부처는 엄중한 상황 인식을 바탕으로 예상 가능한 모든 문제들에 대해서 신속한 대책을 빠짐없게 또 세밀하게 추진해 나가야 되겠습니다.
President Lee made the remarks at an extraordinary cabinet meeting this morning. He stressed the need to minimize potential disruptions to the country's economy while closely monitoring the safety of Korean nationals in the region. He instructed officials to prepare contingency plans for possible emergency evacuations, including the use of military aircraft and charter flights if necessary. And according to South Korea's foreign ministry, South Korea is in fact considering sending charter planes or military aircraft to bring home its nationals stranded in the Middle East. Second Vice Foreign Minister Kim Jin-ah said Wednesday that the government is reviewing multiple options following an interagency meeting on the situation, including dispatching additional pan-government rapid response teams. Kim said authorities are closely monitoring South Koreans stranded in the United Arab Emirates and other countries. She added that Seoul is coordinating with relevant ministries to ensure citizens can return home swiftly and safely. According to Kim, earlier this week, around 17,000 South Korean nationals remain in roughly 10 Middle Eastern countries affected by the conflict. South Korea's stock saw a sharp rebound this morning after plunging for the past 2 days, prompting buy-side sidecars on both the KOSPI and KOSDAQ markets. The Korea Exchange said program buy orders were halted for 5 minutes after the KOSPI 200 futures index surged more than 10% just 6 minutes after the market opened. The KOSDAQ 150 index and its futures also rose more than 10% from the previous close, also bringing a buy-side sidecar into effect. Both markets had activated sell-side sidecars just a day earlier during a sharp sell-off, with the benchmark KOSPI dropping 12.06% to the 5,000 level. Over in Spain, small and medium-sized South Korean businesses are making their presence felt at this year's Mobile World Congress. Our business correspondent Park Junan takes us to Barcelona, where Korean SMEs are promoting their technologies.
At the Mobile World Congress, companies, exhibitors, and potential buyers from 200 countries gather to discover hidden gems in the tech world. It's not just global mega companies that showcase their latest technologies. Here at MWC, there are dedicated pavilions like this one to promote small and medium-sized Korean businesses. This year, 131 SMEs from Korea participated to showcase technologies tailored for global markets. Among them, there was one company which was nominated for this year's Global Awards, often called the Oscars of the mobile industry. That company was N-Open. It provides biometric authentication and identity verification solutions using on-device AI and a physically isolated token system, enabling secure authentication without relying on servers or the cloud.
We are extremely proud that our solution was nominated for the GLOMO Awards, especially given the challenging environment for entering the biometrics market in Europe. Going forward, we will continue to make every effort to ensure that our solution can make a full-scale entry into the European market.
A potential buyer from Spain who visited Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency's pavilion praised the technology on display.
I think the main interest is the technology of Korean companies, because Korean technology is amazing, it's cutting edge, one of the best in the world. Apart from sales, which is our core objective, we can also support them in all the regulatory compliance and the setup process.
As of Wednesday local time, participating SMEs had recorded 556 business consultations, with expert consultations reaching around $195 million and contracts under negotiation totaling $18.6 million. Park Junan, Arirang News, Barcelona.
Meanwhile, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un inspected a new 5,000-ton warship ahead of its deployment and oversaw a successful ship-to-land strategic cruise missile test, according to its state media. The vessel, named Chaehyun, is North Korea's first destroyer of its size and is being promoted as a new symbol of the regime's maritime defense capability, with Kim calling its performance during sea trials satisfactory. He said Pyongyang plans to build 2 destroyers of the same or higher class every year under its next 5-year defense plan, claiming the Navy's nuclear armament is progressing smoothly. Separately, he also attended a nationwide military sniper shooting competition, stressing the growing importance of sniper units in modern warfare and calling for a qualitative leap in their combat readiness. The start of a new school semester isn't just exciting for young students. It also marks a fresh beginning for manhakdos, or students who study at a later age. Women who were unable to finish school earlier in life for various reasons are now returning to the classroom, proving that it's never too late to learn. Our Jong-un has their story.
In class, students repeat after the teacher, carefully spelling out the English alphabet for the very first time. Laughter and smiles fill the room as they explore subjects that once felt out of reach, but long sparked their curiosity. Among them is 87-year-old Kim Moon-ja, clutching her pen, excited for her very first day of school. Though she began her education later than most, there's no shortage of enthusiasm.
I have to study hard, because if someone else learns 10 letters, I need to make at least one of them truly mine, so I have to keep trying my best.
Kim was forced to stop her early school education at a time when many girls were unable to continue their studies. As a teenager, she lived through the Korean War, carrying responsibilities that were far beyond her years. Instead of going to school, she worked to support her family and made sure her children received the education she couldn't. So now, even lingering injuries cannot dampen her determination to learn. These adult learners, known in Korean as manhakdo, are returning to school later in life, proving that it is never too late to begin again. Many of these women who have spent much of their lives as housewives are now in their 40s, 50s, or even 80s, and are finally pursuing the education they once had to set aside.
When a new semester begins, new students enroll and bring their dreams with them. I see it as an opportunity to help them achieve those dreams, which makes me feel very happy and excited.
For these high school students, this is more than just the start of a new semester in education. It is the beginning of a long-delayed dream. Jo Young-un, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. The Spanish government has denied White House claims that Madrid agreed to cooperate with U.S. military operations in the Middle East. Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel Alvarez on Wednesday rejected White House statements that Madrid had agreed to support U.S. strikes against Iran. The denial follows President Trump's threat on Tuesday to cut off all trade after Spain barred the U.S. from using joint military bases for its attacks on Iran. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez also on Wednesday reaffirmed his no to the war policy, describing the conflict in Iran as, quote, Russian roulette with millions of lives. A U.S. submarine on Wednesday sank the Iranian frigate Iris Dena in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Sri Lanka. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed the U.S. Navy conducted the strike against the vessel in international waters. Sri Lankan military rescuers recovered 87 bodies from the site and treated 32 survivors at the hospital in the port city of Gal. The Iranian ship was traveling from India to Iran following a multilateral naval exercise in the Bay of Bengal. Sri Lankan authorities are continuing search and rescue operations for approximately 60 missing crew members. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Wednesday confirmed the U.S. will raise the global import tariff rate to 15% this week. That's an increase from the current 10% tariffs. The administration is implementing the hike under Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act. It is a 150-day temporary measure, but Bessent told CNBC that during that time, the government will conduct studies for more permanent tariffs. That measure was brought in after the Supreme Court struck down Trump's previous tariffs. A total power failure on Wednesday disconnected the Cuban national electric grid, leaving most of the island without electricity. The state electric utility UNE attributed the blackout to an unexpected outage caused by a boiler leak at the Antonio Guterres thermoelectric plant. The Energy Ministry confirmed that the outage halted water services, transportation, and state media broadcasts across Havana and western provinces of Cuba. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Today marks the Gyeongchip, the seasonal division signaling the awakening of nature from winter dormancy. We'll have spring warmth during the day, but rain and snow are expected nationwide. Rain will begin in western regions late this afternoon and spread across the country tonight with 5 to 20 millimeters expected through tomorrow. But mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province might receive 15 centimeters of snowfall. Central inland regions could get about 8 centimeters of snow. But until this precipitation arrives, air quality will remain bad, mainly in the western parts of Korea. And this afternoon, highs will go up a couple of degrees higher than yesterday with Seoul and Busan, both topping out at 13 degrees Celsius, but Daegu, Gwangju, Jeju will be slightly warmer at 16 degrees. And today's precipitation will bring colder air to the country. Morning lows will drop down to below 0 degrees this weekend, bringing a spring cold spell.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.